Have you ever noticed how much power emotions have over your life? One moment, you're happy and motivated, and the next, you're overwhelmed by frustration, sadness, or fear. In an instant, a single thought, a word from someone, or an unexpected situation can completely change how you feel. Most people live like a leaf in the wind, being tossed around by their emotions without any control. They react impulsively, saying things they regret, making rash decisions, or getting stuck in endless cycles of stress and anxiety. But what if I told you that emotions are not meant to control you? Instead, you can learn to understand, channel, and master them. Mastering your emotions isn't just about staying calm. It's about gaining true inner freedom. When you are no longer a slave to your emotions, you make better choices, build stronger relationships, and experience deeper peace and happiness. You stop reacting to life and start responding with wisdom. For thousands of years, Buddhist monks have studied the mind and emotions with incredible depth. They have discovered profound techniques to stay centered in any situation, no matter how challenging. But their wisdom isn't just for monks. It's for anyone who wants to live a balanced, peaceful life. Today, I want to share with you a powerful Buddhist story, one that holds the key to emotional mastery. This story has been passed down for generations, teaching a lesson that can transform the way you deal with emotions forever. It's a story about a wise monk, a frustrated disciple, and a simple yet profound truth that changed everything. Are you ready? Let's dive in. High in the misty mountains of an ancient monastery, there lived a revered Buddhist master named Master Li. His wisdom was known far and wide, and many students sought his guidance to find peace and clarity in their lives. One day, a young disciple named Jin arrived at the monastery. Unlike the other students who spoke little and moved with calmness, Jin was restless. His emotions ruled him. He was quick to anger, easily frustrated, and deeply affected by the words and actions of others. Jin had come in search of a solution. He was tired of being a prisoner to his emotions. One morning, after struggling through meditation, Jin approached Master Li. His eyes were filled with frustration. "Master," he said, barely able to contain his irritation, "I try to meditate, I try to remain calm, but no matter what I do, I can't control my emotions. If someone insults me, I feel rage. If I fail at something, I feel worthless. When sadness comes, it drowns me. How do I stop this?" Master Li looked at Jin with a gentle smile and replied, "Come with me." He led Jin to the edge of a nearby lake. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like a perfect mirror. Master Li picked up a small stone and tossed it into the lake. The stone made a splash and sank immediately, creating ripples that spread outward. "What do you see?" the master asked. Jin watched as the ripples moved across the water. "I see the waves spreading from where the stone fell," he answered. Master Li nodded. "Your emotions are like this stone. When an event happens, an insult, a failure, a painful memory, it is like the stone hitting the water. The disturbance is inevitable. But tell me, what happens to the ripples?" Jin continued watching. Slowly, the ripples faded and the lake returned to perfect stillness. "They disappear," Jin whispered. Master Li smiled. "Exactly. No matter how strong the disturbance, the water always returns to stillness. Your mind is the same. Emotions will come and go, but if you do not hold on to them, they will pass, just like the ripples in the lake." Jin frowned. "But Master, that is easier said than done. When I feel anger or sadness, I can't just let go. It consumes me." Master Li chuckled. "Come, let me show you something else." The master led Jin back to the monastery and into the meditation hall. There, a large earthen jar sat in the center of the room, filled with salt. Master Li handed Jin a small glass of water. "Take a handful of salt and put it in this glass," he instructed. Jin did as he was told. The clear water turned cloudy as the salt dissolved. "Now, drink it," the master said. Jin hesitated, then took a sip, his face twisted in disgust. "It's too salty." Master Li nodded. Then he took another handful of salt and gestured for Jin to follow him outside. They walked back to the lake. "Now, throw this salt into the lake," the master instructed. Jin tossed the salt into the vast body of water. The master waited a moment before bending down and scooping up a handful of lake water. "Now, drink," he said, offering the water to Jin. Jin sipped. This time the water was fresh and pure. "Do you understand?" Master Li asked. Jin furrowed his brow. "Not completely, Master." Master Li sat down by the lake and motioned for Jin to do the same. "The salt represents your suffering, your emotions, your pain, your frustrations. The glass of water represents a narrow mind, one that holds on to emotions tightly. The lake, however, represents an expansive mind, one that does not cling to emotions but lets them dissolve into something greater." He continued, "When you experience pain or anger, it feels overwhelming, just like drinking salty water from a small glass. But if you learn to expand your mind, like this lake, the same pain becomes insignificant. It is still there, but it no longer controls you." Jin sat in silence, absorbing the lesson. He realized that his suffering was not caused by the emotions themselves, but by how small his perspective had been. The next morning, as Jin was sweeping the monastery grounds, another student accidentally bumped into him, causing dust to fly into his face. A week ago, Jin would have reacted instantly, snapping at the student, letting his irritation ruin his day. But now, he paused. He felt the spark of frustration rise, just like a stone hitting the water. But then, he imagined his mind as the vast lake. He took a deep breath. The frustration was still there, but it no longer consumed him. It passed, just like the ripples in the water. Master Li, watching from a distance, smiled. Jin had taken his first step toward mastering his emotions. The story of Jin and Master Li teaches us profound lessons about emotional mastery. Through simple yet powerful metaphors, the ripples in the lake and the lesson of the salt, we learn that emotions are natural, but they don't have to control us. Let's break down these lessons and see how we can apply them in our daily lives. One of the most important lessons from the story is that emotions are temporary. When Master Li threw the stone into the lake, Jin saw the ripples spreading outward. But after a while, the water returned to its natural stillness. This teaches us that emotions, no matter how intense, will eventually pass if we don't hold on to them. However, many people make the mistake of feeding their emotions. When they feel anger, they replay the triggering event over and over. When they feel sadness, they sink into self-pity, deepening their suffering. Instead of letting emotions flow naturally, they cling to them, allowing the ripples to become waves that disturb their peace. To apply this in daily life, we must learn to observe emotions without immediately reacting. The next time you feel angry or anxious, pause for a moment and simply acknowledge what you're feeling. Instead of saying, "I am angry," say, "There is anger in me right now." This small shift in language creates distance between you and your emotions, making it easier to let them go. Another technique is deep breathing. When emotions rise, taking 5 deep breaths allows your nervous system to calm down, just like the lake returning to stillness. Another powerful lesson from the story is that suffering depends on the size of our perspective. Master Li demonstrated this with the salt metaphor. When Jin put a handful of salt into a small glass of water, it became undrinkable. But when the same amount of salt was thrown into a vast lake, it had no effect. The salt represented suffering, and the size of the water represented the mind. A narrow mind makes suffering feel unbearable, while an expansive mind allows suffering to dissolve. In daily life, this means that when we are caught up in problems, we must learn to expand our perspective. Instead of dwelling on minor frustrations, we should zoom out and ask ourselves, will this matter a year from now? 5 years from now? Most of the time, the answer is no. Practicing gratitude is another way to expand the mind. By focusing on what we appreciate rather than what upsets us, we shift our attention away from negativity. When we realize how vast our life is compared to a single bad moment, emotions lose their grip on us. The story also highlights the importance of mindfulness in mastering emotions. Master Li didn't tell Jin to suppress his emotions. He taught him to understand them. Many people believe that emotional control means avoiding or ignoring emotions, but this only leads to repression and greater suffering. True mastery comes from acknowledging emotions, allowing them to exist, and then letting them go. Mindfulness helps us achieve this by keeping us present in the moment. When you feel overwhelmed, bring your attention back to the present. Instead of getting lost in thoughts about the past or future, focus on what is happening right now. If you are eating, notice the taste and texture of your food. If you are walking, pay attention to each step. This simple practice helps ground you, preventing emotions from spiraling out of control. Over time, mindfulness rewires the brain, making it easier to remain calm and balanced. Another valuable lesson from the story is the power of detachment. Jin's greatest struggle was his tendency to identify too strongly with his emotions. When he felt angry, he became anger. When he felt sad, he became sadness. But emotions are not who we are. They are simply passing experiences. By detaching from emotions and seeing them as temporary, we free ourselves from their control. To practice detachment, remind yourself that emotions are like visitors. They come and go, but they do not define you. The next time you feel overwhelmed, visualize yourself as the vast lake from the story. See the emotion as a small ripple on the surface. No matter how strong the ripple, it will fade, and the lake will remain peaceful. This shift in perspective allows you to experience emotions without being consumed by them. Finally, the story teaches us that acceptance is the key to inner peace. Many people suffer not because of emotions themselves, but because they resist them. They believe they shouldn't feel angry, sad, or anxious, and this resistance creates inner conflict. Master Li's lesson shows that emotions are natural, and instead of fighting them, we should learn to accept them. When an emotion arises, instead of resisting it, say to yourself, "I accept this feeling." Allow it to be there without judgment. Ironically, acceptance makes emotions lose their power faster than resistance does. The more we fight emotions, the stronger they become. But when we allow them to come and go, they pass effortlessly, just like the ripples in the lake. By applying these lessons, we can develop emotional mastery and live with greater peace and clarity. We cannot control what happens in life, but we can control how we respond. Through mindfulness, detachment, and acceptance, we can become like the lake, calm, expansive, and unshaken by the passing ripples of emotion. In today's fast-paced, highly reactive world, mastering emotions is more challenging than ever. Social media, constant notifications, and daily stressors create an environment where emotional outbursts are common and mindfulness is rare. However, the teachings from the Buddhist story of Jin and Master Li provide a timeless guide to emotional mastery. The key lies in awareness, detachment, and conscious action. Let's explore how we can apply these lessons in real life to achieve lasting emotional balance. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with emotions is impulsiveness. Someone insults them, and they snap back. They receive bad news, and they panic. The ability to pause before reacting is the first step to emotional mastery. The next time you feel anger, frustration, or sadness rising, stop for 3 seconds before reacting. In those moments, ask yourself, is this emotion controlling me, or am I observing it? Will my reaction make things better or worse? Can I let this emotion pass like ripples in a lake? This simple pause prevents destructive reactions and gives you a chance to respond with awareness rather than impulse. Imagine you receive a rude email from a coworker. Instead of immediately replying in anger, you take 3 deep breaths. You then decide to step away, reread the email later with a calmer mind, and respond professionally. This prevents unnecessary conflict and strengthens your emotional control. When we learn to pause, we create space between stimulus and response, allowing wisdom to guide our actions rather than emotion. As taught in the story, a narrow mind makes suffering feel unbearable, while an expansive mind allows pain to dissolve. To reduce emotional suffering, we must zoom out and see the bigger picture. Whenever you face a problem, ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Is this situation truly as bad as my mind is making it? Can I shift my focus to something positive instead? Often, when we are emotionally distressed, we magnify the problem, making it feel bigger than it actually is. But by changing our perspective, we can weaken its hold over us. For example, imagine being stuck in traffic and feeling frustrated. Instead of allowing the irritation to ruin your day, expand your mind. Realize that this delay is temporary, that stressing over it won't change anything, and that you can use this time to listen to a podcast or reflect in silence. The moment you shift your perspective, your frustration disappears. The same principle applies to larger problems in life. When you make your mind vast like a lake, challenges become small and insignificant. Mindfulness is another essential tool in mastering emotions. Many people assume that emotional control means suppressing feelings, but this leads to internal pressure that eventually explodes. True mastery comes from being fully aware of emotions without being consumed by them. Mindfulness means observing emotions as they arise without labeling them as good or bad. Instead of resisting sadness, acknowledge it. Instead of pushing away anger, notice it without judgment. The key is to experience emotions without becoming attached to them. One way to practice mindfulness is through breath awareness. When emotions rise, shift your focus to your breath. Feel the air entering and leaving your body. This anchors you to the present moment and prevents emotions from spiraling out of control. Another way is through mindful observation. When feeling an emotion, mentally say, I am experiencing anger. I am experiencing disappointment. This simple act of labeling creates separation between you and your emotions, making it easier to let them pass. Detachment is another powerful tool in emotional mastery. Most suffering comes from clinging to expectations, clinging to past events, clinging to what we think should happen. When things don't go our way, we resist reality, and this resistance creates suffering. Learning to detach means accepting life as it is rather than as we wish it to be. It doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop letting our emotions control us. A common example is dealing with criticism. Many people take criticism personally and allow it to ruin their confidence. But if we detach from the need for approval, criticism loses its sting. Instead of thinking, "They insulted me, so I must be worthless," we can think, "This is just one person's opinion. It does not define me." By detaching from external validation, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. Acceptance is the final step toward emotional mastery. Many people suffer not because of emotions themselves, but because they resist them. They believe they shouldn't feel angry, sad, or anxious, and this resistance creates inner conflict. But, as Master Lee demonstrated, emotions are like ripples in a lake. They come and go naturally. Instead of fighting emotions, we should accept them. When an emotion arises, instead of resisting it, say to yourself, "I accept this feeling. It is here, and that's okay." Ironically, the moment we accept an emotion, it starts to lose its power over us. By applying these principles, pausing before reacting, shifting perspective, practicing mindfulness, detaching from emotions and accepting them, we can navigate life with greater emotional balance. The modern world is filled with stressors, but we have the power to choose how we respond. Through conscious practice, we can become like the lake, vast, calm, and unshaken by the passing ripples of emotion. Emotional mastery is not about eliminating emotions, but about understanding and guiding them. Through the story of Jin and Master Lee, we've learned that emotions are like ripples in a lake, temporary and ever-changing. When we resist them, they persist. But when we observe them with detachment, they naturally fade away. The key lessons from this journey include pausing before reacting, shifting our perspective, practicing mindfulness, detaching from emotional attachments, and accepting emotions rather than fighting them. These principles, rooted in Buddhist wisdom, offer a timeless roadmap for inner peace. In today's fast-paced world, emotions often feel overwhelming. Anger, frustration, and anxiety can take control if we don't develop the awareness to manage them. However, we must remember that our emotions should serve us, not control us. When we react impulsively, we give away our power. But when we learn to pause, reflect, and respond consciously, we reclaim control over our inner world. Mastering emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. It means allowing them to exist without letting them dictate our actions. Think about your own life. How often do you let emotions drive your decisions? How many times have you regretted an emotional reaction? Imagine how different things could be if, instead of reacting impulsively, you paused, breathed, and responded with clarity. You don't have to be a Buddhist monk to master your emotions. You just need consistent practice. Every time you choose awareness over reactivity, you take a step toward emotional freedom. Starting today, commit to one simple practice, the 3-second rule. The next time you feel a strong emotion rising, whether it's anger, frustration, or anxiety, pause for 3 seconds before responding. In those moments, remind yourself, "I am not my emotions. They are temporary. I have control over how I respond." This small habit can create a massive shift in your life. I encourage you to take action now. Share in the comments. What emotions do you struggle with the most? How do you plan to implement these techniques in your daily life? If this video resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could benefit from learning emotional mastery. Together, let's build a world where emotions empower us rather than control us.